Modern engineers reverse engineered the Roman Onager, used the best physics software available today, built a full-scale replica, ran it through computational modeling. Their simulation broke. The weapon performed better than the model said it should. And nobody, not a single researcher, has fully explained why. And here's the thing. That's not even the most unexplained weapon on this list. Okay, so we've got this tendency, all of us, to assume ancient people were primitive, like they were just figuring things out by accident, stumbling into discoveries, getting lucky. And look, sometimes that's true. But here's the thing though. There's a specific category of ancient weapons, documented, verified, historically confirmed weapons, where modern researchers have looked at what these civilizations built, run the numbers, done the testing, and come back with the same answer every time. We don't fully understand how they did it. Not because we haven't tried, because the more we study them, the more sophisticated they turn out to be. 7 weapons, 7 civilizations, 7 engineering achievements that modern science is still, right now, actively working to fully explain. Real talk. When most people think about Roman warfare, they think swords, shields, formations. They don't think about the fact that the Roman army was running the most sophisticated artillery program the ancient world had ever seen. The Onager, named after a wild donkey because of the brutal kick it delivered on release. Here's what this thing could do. 200-pound boulder, 300 meters, accurately. And I want you to really sit with that word, accurately, because this wasn't just raw power. Roman military records, actual surviving documents, describe calibration procedures, test shots, tension adjustments, walking the projectile onto a target, the way a modern artillery crew would. This was engineered precision, 2,000 years ago. Okay, so how did it actually work? The Onager used torsion, thick ropes, made from horsehair, sinew, sometimes human hair, twisted under extreme tension until the stored energy was almost unimaginable. Then you load the sling, pull back the arm, release. And the math behind it, the relationship between rope diameter, arm length, and projectile weight, turns out to be extraordinarily precise. Roman engineers weren't guessing at these ratios. They'd worked them out empirically over generations. And get this, when modern engineers built a full-scale replica, exact materials, exact dimensions, exact Roman specifications, and ran it through computational fluid dynamics modeling, the real machine outperformed the simulation. The model predicted a certain output. The actual weapon exceeded it. And the gap between what the physics model said should happen and what actually happened hasn't been fully closed. Researchers think it has something to do with the organic rope materials, the way sinew and hair store and release energy differently than any synthetic material we've modeled. But that's a theory, not a full explanation. The Romans built something that still surprises us, and they built thousands of them. Okay, so imagine you're a sailor. Enemy ships are closing in, and suddenly something lands in the water around you, and the water catches fire. Not near the water, not above it, on it. You grab a bucket, you throw water on it, and it burns harder. This was Greek fire, the Byzantine Empire's most devastating military secret. And for 300 years, it was essentially unstoppable. Here's the thing though, we still don't know exactly what it was. Let me give you what we do know. Byzantine accounts describe a liquid weapon delivered through a pressurized bronze pump, something like a massive flamethrower mounted on the front of warships. The range was documented at roughly 50 feet. It stuck to surfaces. It floated on water. It reignited when doused, and it could not be extinguished by sand alone, which tells us something important about its combustion chemistry. Modern chemists have proposed three main theories. Theory 1. Quicklime mixed with petroleum distillate. Quicklime reacts violently with water, generating heat, which reignites the petroleum. This explains the water reignition. It doesn't fully explain the adhesion properties. Theory 2. Calcium phosphide reacts with water to produce phosphine gas, which auto-ignites on contact with air. This explains the water behavior. Doesn't explain how it was stable enough to store and transport on ships without accidentally igniting. Theory 3. Highly refined crude oil with pine resin additives explains the adhesion, doesn't fully explain the water reignition. And get this, none of the three theories accounts for every documented property simultaneously. Nobody has reconstructed a single formula that does everything Greek fire reportedly did in over 500 years of modern chemistry. But wait, here's what makes this even more remarkable. The Byzantines protected this formula so aggressively that when Constantinople fell in 1453, the knowledge died with it completely. The families who held the formula, and it was kept within specific families, not institutions, took it to their graves. A weapon so powerful that the people who made it would rather let it disappear from history than let it fall into the wrong hands. And it worked. Real talk. When European crusaders first encountered Damascus steel blades in the 12th century, they wrote home about them. Not because they were pretty, because they were cutting through European swords without chipping. Medieval accounts, multiple independent sources, describe Damascus blades slicing a silk scarf, dropped onto the edge, not pressed, dropped, falling under its own weight onto a blade and splitting cleanly. Modern metallurgists spent decades trying to figure out how. They finally got close in 2006 using electron microscopes. What they found inside authentic Damascus blades was carbon nanotubes. Carbon nanotubes. One of the most advanced materials in modern nanotechnology. Were officially discovered in 1991. Damascus smiths were apparently incorporating them into blade structure by the 11th century, not intentionally, as a byproduct of their process. But here's the thing, the process that created them has never been fully reconstructed. Okay, so here's how Damascus steel was made. As far as we can tell, it started with woods, a specific type of crucible steel produced in India from a particular ore source. That woods was then worked by Syrian smiths in Damascus, using techniques passed master to apprentice across generations. The heating cycles, the folding patterns, the cooling rods, all of it created a carbide banding pattern in the steel that gave the blade its legendary combination of hardness and flexibility. Hard enough to hold an edge that splits silk, flexible enough not to shatter on impact. Both properties simultaneously, in the same blade. Modern metallurgy can produce one or the other. Getting both at the same time is still genuinely difficult. And get this, Damascus steel production stopped around 1750. The specific ore source changed, the supply chain broke, and 500 years of accumulated smithing knowledge, passed person to person, never written down, never documented, simply ended. We've been trying to reverse engineer the result without access to the process ever since. Okay, so this one tends to surprise people because it sounds like it shouldn't be possible. Silent weapons, no combustion, no gunpowder, no explosion of any kind, just compressed air and enough force to punch through armor. Ancient Chinese military records describe wind bows, weapons that used stored compressed air to fire projectiles silently. No sound signature, no smoke, no flash, just a projectile arriving from a direction you couldn't identify. But wait, the most documented version of this technology comes from 18th century Austria, the Girandoni air rifle, used by the Austrian military starting in 1780. 22 shots, under a minute, consistent lethal force, each shot. Lewis and Clark carried one across America. Documented, they used it to demonstrate American military capability to Native American tribes they encountered, specifically because the silent rapid-fire capability was psychologically devastating to anyone who'd never seen it. Here's the thing, though. Modern analysis of the Girandoni's reservoir, the actual surviving weapons, measured and tested, shows a pressure efficiency that engineers consider remarkable for the manufacturing precision available in 1780. The tolerances required to hold that pressure consistently across 22 shots without leakage were at the absolute edge of what hand-tooled metalwork could achieve, and they achieved it reliably enough to issue to soldiers in the field, in combat conditions. The gap between what was theoretically possible with 1780 manufacturing and what the Girandoni demonstrably did is something engineers still find difficult to fully account for. Real talk, this one is going to sound like a conspiracy theory. It's not. Stay with me. Archaeological dig outside Baghdad. Researchers find a clay jar. Inside, a copper cylinder, an iron rod, and chemical traces of an acidic liquid. When replicated exactly and filled with grape juice, a historically plausible electrolyte, it produced approximately 1 volt of electricity. It was dated to somewhere between 250 BC and 640 AD. This is not disputed. The object is a galvanic cell. It produces electricity. That part is settled science. What nobody agrees on is what it was for. Okay, so 3 main theories. Electroplating, using low voltage current to coat objects in thin layers of metal. Some ancient artifacts from the region show gold and silver surface treatments that are thinner and more even than fire gilding typically produces. Consistent with electroplating, not proven, medical use. Low voltage electrical stimulation for pain relief. Ancient Egyptian texts describe using electric catfish therapeutically. The voltage from the Baghdad battery is in the range used in modern TENS therapy. Plausible, unconfirmed. And then there's the weapon theory. Connect multiple Baghdad batteries in series, which the technology absolutely allowed, and the combined voltage is sufficient to deliver a genuinely painful and disorienting electric shock. Ancient accounts from the region describe weapons that caused invisible strikes, enemies weakened without visible wounds, soldiers dropping without being touched. The connection between those accounts and a series-connected battery array is unproven, but the technology to make it work demonstrably existed 2,000 years before we officially invented the battery. And get this, nobody knows why these objects were buried the way they were found, in ceramic jars, sealed, like something being stored or hidden. We genuinely don't know. Okay, so Archimedes, you probably know the name. Bathtub, Eureka, displacement of water. That's the version they teach in school. Here's the version they don't teach. 212 BC, the Roman navy is besieging Syracuse. Archimedes is defending the city. And according to multiple ancient sources, about Lucian, Galen, others, he directed focused sunlight onto Roman ships, using arrays of polished bronze mirrors, and set them on fire at a distance. Now, modern scientists have tested this, and the results are genuinely divided. MIT 127 mirrors, oak target representing a ship's hull, direct sunlight, 100 feet distance. Result, the target ignited. Mythbusters tested it. Couldn't replicate ignition under combat conditions. Moving target, variable sunlight, real-world mirror coordination challenges. Declared it a myth. But here's the thing though. Both results are accurate, and they don't actually contradict each other. MIT proved the physics works. Under optimal conditions, focused bronze mirror arrays can ignite wood at 100 feet. That's not in question anymore. What Mythbusters actually proved is that doing this in combat, with moving ships, variable cloud cover, and soldiers manually coordinating mirrors, is extremely difficult. The unresolved question isn't the physics. The unresolved question is manufacturing. Could ancient bronze mirrors, hand-polished, without modern abrasives, without optical measurement tools, be produced to the surface precision required, in sufficient quantity, in 212 BC? That question is still technically open. What nobody disputes, Archimedes understood the mathematics of reflected light well enough to design a system that modern optical engineers confirm would theoretically work. He was doing optics 2,200 years ago without a single modern instrument. The Mongolian composite bow, 7 centuries of perfection, 1830 to 2100. Real talk. The last weapon on this list doesn't have an unsolved mystery at its core. It has something harder. It has a solved mystery with a missing piece that we can't get back. The Mongolian composite bow, draw weight up to 170 pounds, accurate at over 500 meters, small enough to fire on horseback at full gallop, made without a single piece of metal. Modern materials engineers have studied the lamination structure, horn on the belly, wooden core, sinew backing, and confirmed something remarkable. The layering sequence is optimal. Not good. Not impressive for the era. Optimal. As in, if you ran a computer simulation today, asking for the best possible material arrangement to store and release energy in a bow, you'd get something very close to what Mongolian bowyers were building 700 years ago. Here's how the physics works. Horn on the belly compresses when the bow is drawn. Horn handles compression stress exceptionally well. Sinew on the back stretches. Sinew handles tension stress exceptionally well. The wooden core transfers energy between them. The reflex curve, the way the bow bends backward when unstrung, preloads that system before you even draw. Every material is in its mechanically optimal position. Every curve serves a function. Nothing is decorative. Nothing is accidental. Mongolian bowyers figured this out without material science, without stress testing equipment, without a single equation. Through 7 centuries of accumulated craft knowledge, passed father to son, master to apprentice, generation to generation, and get this, the specific hide glue formula used to bond those layers together was part of that oral tradition, and several of those family lineages died out in the 20th century. Modern attempts to reconstruct the adhesive from documented ingredients produce a functional bond, but under temperature cycling, specifically in extreme cold, the reconstructed formula performs measurably worse than authentic historical examples. Cold weather, which is exactly the condition Mongolian bows were most relied upon, winter campaigns, steppe warfare, the conditions that built an empire, the formula that worked best in the cold, is the one that's gone. 700 years of refinement, passed person to person, never written, now partially lost, and what remains still outperforms modern synthetic alternatives in specific conditions. 7 weapons, 7 civilizations, 7 engineering achievements where modern science looks at the result and says, we understand most of this, but not all of it. And here's what connects every single one of them. None of these were accidents. None of these were lucky discoveries. Every one of them represents generations of accumulated knowledge, tested, refined, passed forward, without universities, without laboratories, without the scientific method as we formally define it. They were doing science. They just called it something else. And the uncomfortable question, the one I keep coming back to, isn't how they built these things. The uncomfortable question is, how much of what they knew didn't survive? How many formulas died with the last person who knew them? How many techniques exist only as archaeological traces that we're still trying to decode? How many Damascus smiths, Greek fire chemists, Mongolian bowyers took irreplaceable knowledge to their graves, not out of selfishness, but simply because nobody thought to write it down? We may never fully know. And honestly, that might be the point. Some knowledge wasn't meant to be permanent. It was meant to be earned. If this video changed how you see ancient engineering, drop a comment. Tell me which weapon surprised you the most. I genuinely want to know. I read every single one. And if you're new here, this is what Lore Vault does. We go deep on the history that doesn't make it into textbooks. Subscribe, because there's a lot more where this came from.